My name is Deputy Hilary Jeune and I'm the Chair of the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
Deputy Tom Coles, Vice Chair.
Deputy Alex Curtis, Panel Member.
Constable David Johnson, Panel Member.
Councillor Wendy, Minister for Infrastructure.
Tim Daniels, Director of Jersey Property Holdings.
Ellen Littlechild, Group Director of Ops Transport and Sport.
And John Littlewood, Head of Technical Support Services Project for Ops and Transport.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Minister. I'd like to start with maybe things that we were discussing last week in the budget and what comes next. So following last week's budget debate, an amendment which allocates $500,000 from the infrastructure rolling vote between 2026 and 2028 to fund the neighbourhood improvement areas in St Helier was accepted by the Council of Ministers. Do you believe this commitment aligns with your infrastructure and capital planning for the next 3 years?
Yeah, so it's not new money, it's money that was agreed in the previous budget. So I think it was the right thing to accept that. I think it just helps keep the focus on the partnership working, and I think when you go around St Helier and see the improvements that have been made, I think it's very welcome.
And do you expect any projects or priorities have to be deprioritised or delayed because of this now move to specifically focus on this?
Well, it's not, as I said, it's not new money, so I think the team will manage our workload accordingly, and I think we inevitably will have to make some slight changes, but we were committed 12 months ago to invest this amount of money from Deputy Gardner's original proposal. This just ensures that it's spent annually, so I think we're quite relaxed.
Thank you. Last week as well, some discussions were had around Fort Regent, and some members in the State Assembly questioned that they hadn't seen a lot of details around kind of the big business case and more details in understanding the phase 1 and phase 2. So I was wondering if the business case for Fort Regent will be published or will be put into the public domain or to the Assembly, so there will be a bit more information of understanding what exactly will be done with phase 1 specifically for the moment.
Well, certainly phase 1 is about making sure that the building is serviceable. So it's about ensuring that we've got up-to-date electrical services, up-to-date plumbing, up-to-date railings at an appropriate height, for example, ensuring that the asbestos is, if we find, or where we find asbestos, it's likely where we find, not if we find asbestos, so that's removed safely. So that's very much about phase 1 of the works. In terms of the phase 2 element, then yes, we're still in consultation with different key stakeholder groups, trying to formulate designs and talking to people about facilities, and that will need to come to the floor of the Assembly to get additional funding.
Okay, so that will be when the Assembly members would see more detail.
Yeah, and I gave that commitment last week. I think it's important that we get there, and I think I said last week that I'd recently attended school council sessions, and that's just a small part of the work that's going on behind the scenes. Yeah.
And in that kind of, so that phase 2, you've said before in public about the need to wash its face, whatever is put up there. What kind of visitors will need to be to kind of go through the fort, paying visitors?
So we expect to need around 500,000 people footfall per annum. And when you consider the footfall at the cinemas currently, that's around 160 to 180,000 people going through the cinemas currently. So we do think that it's achievable. We do think that when you combine the leisure facilities, concert events facilities, that we will be able to achieve 500,000 visits a year.
And has there been analysis done on what happens if that those levels don't get reached in that kind of, depending on the population size or the tourist size, and especially of course fluctuation during the year? I mean, is there been a bigger analysis of kind of where the maximum and the
So that's
the
the
minimum.
high level number. That's not broken down to a monthly figure or anything like that. And I was involved in a facility in St John that used to see 60,000 visits a year. So that's very small in comparison to what is going to be developed at Fort Regent. And I think it's quite surprising how quickly. I think last week we heard on the radio about the footfall in St Helier, and one of the monitors recorded 400,000 people had passed, or 400 passes of that monitor. So I think that 500,000 is achievable.
Is achievable. And Minister, you talked about what's potentially up there, including the cinema, and you've mentioned also before the bowling alley. But obviously, at the moment, we have those facilities in other places in Jersey. So, what is the impact of these existing island facilities? Are they assumed to be carried on, or will they be? Because I assume will not be able to have two lots of cinemas or two lots of bowling alleys.
Well,
how does that work, and what discussions have
We
happened?
don't currently have bowling facilities, 10-pin bowling facilities in St Helier, so I think that's a great opportunity to increase that sport actually, because my understanding is the current facility in St Peter's is getting tired. But this is about coming to town with a new offering for the market. In terms of the cinemas, then the land at the waterfront, I think the Constable of St Saviour always mentions that cinemas don't need a sea view, and I think that's quite appropriate. So
that what we're saying is that at the waterfront, the plans for the cinema will be moved to the Fort Regent, but with anything else with the facilities, it's up to
down to private enterprise, won't it? Yeah.
Okay, and we've had some information about the trampolining sessions related to there was for those children who need sensory benefits, or those with physical disabilities and additional needs. And there is concern, or there was concern, that there wasn't any gymnastic facilities to accommodate them. Is this being sorted out? Have they been?
Well, I'm delighted to hear yesterday that the new gymnastics facility in town has been granted planning approval. I'm not sure if there are any caveats to that planning, but so we're in discussions with 3, if not 4 people about providing gymnastics sessions at Oakfield. And part of those discussions will be to include an element of time for gymnastics for those children who used to be in the special gymnastics club. So we're very keen to make sure that is included. In fact, only 2 weeks ago I had a phone call one evening from a parent who was very concerned about that. And I've seen firsthand the benefits of the special gymnastics, and not just those people who go away and win lots of medals, but to the families of those children that participated. Part of the challenge, we understand, has been around lack of volunteers. And so hopefully our discussions with potential providers at Oakfield will encompass some kind of facility for that. And in terms of trampolining, specifically trampolining, I believe there are 1, if not 2 secondary schools that are looking to accommodate some of that.
Fantastic, thank you, Minister. And coming back a bit to Fort Regent, as the Minister overseeing the project, what is your opinion on the fact that the delivery partner was not able to find or source a landscape architect locally to design the outside of Fort Regent?
Well, I have to say, personally, disappointing. I think the point was made that a number of local landscape architects have got UK partners. And I was talking only yesterday about how the procurement is undertaken. I have to say, having attended one of those sessions, or 2 sessions, that were facilitated by the landscape architects, I was totally impressed with the quality of the work. And there were local people involved, so members of the SOJDC team were there, involved with their sleeves rolled up, and it was really great to see, and I wish more people could have witnessed that.
And would you say that, of course, that's the designing of whatever is going to happen outside. But obviously there's also the actually building and creating that. Will that happen with local landscape?
We certainly will hope it will be with local contractors, absolutely.
Could I ask about how you can use your role as the minister, kind of commissioning the work to ensure that what you want to see from a kind of a capacity building in the island goes forward? So I know that the Treasury Minister's been asked questions in the States, but from your side, has seeing the landscape architecture work go, from what we understand, wholly off island, led you to want to kind of firm up how you ask SOJDC to deliver or contract in the future, such as partnering with, local firms where an off island is the main procurer?
Yeah, so I think what is important is that the professional services typically make up around 10% of the spend. I think it's vital that the construction work is carried out by local contractors in the first place. There is always a need, and as a department, I challenge almost on a weekly basis, perhaps not quite weekly, but I can assure you that yesterday I was challenging the spend on external consultants, and I'm delighted with the progress that we've made as a team, and I think I'd like to see that progress continue through the arm's length organisations, and I think the Council of Ministers as a whole would like to see that as well.
And as the Fort Regent develops into that second phase, how will you ensure, or the future Minister of Infrastructure ensure that as they're overseeing the project, that there will be more and more of this local delivery partners and trying to ensure that we can get the best out of the local
Well, I think
market?
what we're going to be doing is trying to include something in the agreement between both parties. I think it's important that we don't limit ourselves. I think we can all see the value of the local pound, and if that goes around, how that generates. But we shouldn't stifle certainly the creative elements. Because we're limited to the pool that we can fish in, we need to make sure that we get the best. And I have to say, I was totally impressed with the team 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. And coming back to that wider overall major capital projects that we talked about last week in the budget, and there is a number that are being planned or are underway. Can you set out the current sequencing plan for these projects and how they intend to align over the next 5 years? Is there this wider plan, and do we see that?
Well, there is, and I think you're due to get a briefing on the ICE programme in the coming weeks. I think we had hoped to have been able to do that before now, but the budget has firmed up our confidence in some of those projects. So that will happen. I don't think it's going to happen before Christmas, but I would like to think it's going to happen in early January. So the ICE project is about looking at not only what government are going to be doing, but also what our partners, so Andiam Homes, SOJDC, Ports of Jersey, what they've got in the pipeline is to try and help the construction industry understand what we're going to need in terms of professional services and construction going forward. But we've got a number of major projects currently. The team continue to do work on fire safety in the Sipes estate. That's an ongoing project, which really is about making sure that the Sipes estate is up to standard for 2026 and beyond. We're doing some work on Highlands College in terms of what the needs are, and what we have done work on the building, but we're also looking at the future.
I think, and I think those are things that we've definitely seen and heard from you, Minister. And I think the next step for the panel is really understanding about those bigger projects which you were talking about, which is like South Hill, Waterfront, Fort Regent. Of course, we've just talked about the harbour, hospital, Gas Place, school. There's a number of really big projects that are coming along, and that have all been said will be coming shortly in the time frame. And it was wondering how you and officers are, and I don't know whether that's part of the ICE programme, kind of assess how the local construction industry's capacity is to deliver these projects, to make sure that there is the sequencing, or that some things can be done concurrently, because of course a number of the projects I've just said are also related to politics as much as just in capital projects.
Yeah,
So
and that's
and that is a big.
that is a good point. You know, the South Hill that you mentioned is much later than we would have hoped and anticipated, and I understand there are revised plans with planning again now. I think I read that in the newspaper. So but the sales have started at South Hill, and they need to achieve a certain level of sales before they can start their programme. But that work we hope is going to start shortly. I think they've done some site work. We're seeing at Overdale the hoardings, etc., have been put up, making good progress with the negotiations with the main contractor there. And I'd expect us to be going out to tender in January for the groundworks again with the local contractor. I'd fully expect that to be let to a local contractor.
And so, do you, in your view, currently, do you think that this wide government capital programme and those big projects that we're seeing, obviously also with partners, is deliverable with capacity that exists on Ireland today?
Well, I think with the exception of the health new hospital, I think the majority of that will be. But there are times when people will bring in specialist resource, and I'm always reminded by my team about the fact that we don't have people that can do everything in Jersey. We've got people that can do most things, but not quite everything. So there will be that, and I'm not sure who SOJDC have selected for their programme at South Hill. But they have in the past used a French company, which would have meant that workers would have been brought onto the island at times.
Thank you. Maybe passing over to Deputy Coles.
Thank you. Minister, you've also already mentioned about the ICE programme, the Island Construction and Engineering programme. You've mentioned that we're going to have a briefing, but is there anything you can update us on today?
Well, I don't have the details of the programme per se in front of me. All I can say is that following the budget last week, then clearly we've got a lot more certainty, notwithstanding some of those projects have got to go through planning, and we know the uncertainty that there can be around some of those things. But we do have lots of work underway. We've got lots of enabling works. I was delighted yesterday when I drove through Five Oaks to see the new homes being built opposite the old Jersey Evening Post facility at Five Oaks. Recently I was at Zion and was delighted to be involved in the topping out at new homes there. St. Peter's, we're seeing the progress. We've got the groundworks taking place on the St. John's Main Road and at St. Peter's. So those enabling works are well underway.
But what's been the delays around the publishing of the programme?
Well, it's around. So we did share the information with the construction industry 12 months ago, and one of the key things is around the certainty that we've got. So where we've got high confidence, we're able to say we've got high confidence, moderate or low confidence. And really the industry is interested in where we've got high confidence and moderate confidence. If we haven't got confidence, then it's not certain, is it? So we're trying to make sure that what we present to yourselves and to the industry is relevant and is deliverable.
And so just to go back to that delay, because of course we got briefed as well quite a while ago on ICE, and so trying to understand your answer there, Minister, for the delay. Is it because there was the lack of information to be able to put into the programme to be able to then publish it? Is that where? And do you feel that it's there now and that kind of information will continue to be of that level going forward as well?
Yeah, certainly the confidence increases on every budget cycle. So we've anticipated that we're going to be investing over £40 million at Fort Regent, but until the Estate Assembly votes one way or the other, we can't have the certainty, and that's still going to go through a planning process. So we still need to get planning permission to do some of the works. So that's what we need to explain to the industry, is where we're at with each stage. Clearly a lot of focus has been on the hospital, and we're not going to release the figures for the hospital until we've signed contracts because of the commercial negotiations. So we had hoped to publish it earlier, and then we're going to have the debate around investing in Jersey, and that again, depending on the outcome of that debate, will give us levels of certainty on other projects.
One of the stated purposes of the ICE programme was to prevent job stacking when major government projects compete for the same labour and resources at the same time. Without the programme in place, how are you currently assessing and managing the risk of overlapping in delivery, especially as within government as well? We know there's limits on how much can be delivered at one time.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. I've learned quite a lot in the last 2 years about quarries and the like, and production of materials, be that for construction and or for roads resurfacing, for example. So there are challenges with what we can produce, right back down to the source of the product. We haven't delayed projects because the market is too hot. Clearly, there's demand in the market for work, and so we're trying our hardest to get work. And when I met with the Chamber of Commerce, with the Chief Minister, a couple of months ago, and explained the level of investment with local companies into some of our infrastructure programs, you don't often see them. You don't see all of them because they're not above the ground. Oakfield is a great example of a project, over £8 million investment, local contractors, delivered on time and on budget. So we're not stacking up work, but we're mindful of, we don't want to overheat the market, but there is certainly capacity at the moment.
So given the scale of forthcoming government capital programme, what assessments have been made of the likelihood that contractors will need to source labour from off-island to meet demands?
Well, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think that there's a general understanding that the hospital will require significant external resource to come and work on that. We hope local resource will also be involved, and certainly the local contractors put up the hoardings. A local contractor, I fully expect to do the groundworks, and there will be local contractors, I'm sure, used as part of the project. So there is, whether it's architects or structural engineers, support services, construction workers, I think there is capacity on land at the moment.
Okay. You mentioned, obviously, the ICE programme is going to cover not just government, but also our arm's length bodies like Andium and SOJDC. So what governance structures are currently in place to the platform to coordinating the ICE programme to make sure that whoever manages the ICE programme has sufficient authority to keep all that together and for cross-departmental?
Part of the challenge and part of the delay is some of those arm's length organisations have changed business plans or adjusted business plans recently that impacts on what their capital programme is going to be. And so when we talk about levels of confidence, an arm's length organisation's board will have had to have supported something that's on that programme. Otherwise, there's no point in us including that. Yeah, so that is part of the mix.
I suppose one of the other questions that comes back from that around the ICE programme is how far back or forward in the process does it start before it gets registered? Because you're talking about support services. Of course, you've got architects, you've got planning consultants, and they all start on that really early stage before you're even what you class as shovel ready.
Yeah.
So obviously, you'd have a programme like South Hill where it's been expected to happen for years, but actually, at what point would that programme then appear in ICE?
Well, I believe it is in ICE.
No, but I mean,
and it appears to be on ICE as well, doesn't it?
But I mean, talking in that overall view about how a project would start to appear in ICE.
It is back to that point around, it is all subject to funding. So it's in terms of the length of the ICE programme, it is for the budget period. But it is, our confidence has got to be based on whether a project has or hasn't got planning permission, whether we believe it's going to get planning permission. Hopefully we believe that everything we put forward is going to get planning permission, but we know that some sites are trickier than others. So I think the South Hill project would have been in the, I'm confident it was in the draft that we saw probably 12 months ago, and it will certainly be in this programme.
Okay. Has anybody got any more questions on ice before we move on? No. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to PFAS. Obviously, we know you're not the minister who's responsible for the environment. However, you will be a minister who might have a larger involvement with PFAS. This morning, the independent PFAS scientific advisory panel published its interim results of testing PFAS levels in food and the environment. The panel notes that concentrations of PFOS in enhanced treated biosolids have decreased since the cessation of groundwater disposal from the airport fire training ground into the foul sewer network. What the assessment has your department made of the current levels of PFAS in biosolids produced by the sewage treatment works, and how are they being monitored and managed going forward?
Well, as you say, the report was released, I think, at 9 o'clock this morning, and I probably saw it at 5 to 10. So I have had a quick read of this. It's important to us, not only from a solid waste, but also a liquid waste perspective.
Okay.
Is there anything you want to add, Alan?
Yeah, so as you rightly say, Deputy Coles, the levels are low, as you've seen in the reports from the effluent. What we are continuing to do is obviously monitor the biosolids that are going onto land and to continue to monitor, obviously, the soil and the land that it's going onto. We have been doing, in recent months, monthly monitoring, and we'll be reviewing that process in the future and seeing whether that should be quarterly moving forward.
So in light of the evolving understanding of PFAS risk, do you anticipate these frameworks needing to be reviewed?
Certainly, yeah.
Given that Le Collette's waste exception criteria was revised in 2020 to impose a zero tolerance policy for PFAS contaminated waste, yet PFAS contaminated waste material has since been accepted for disposal, why has this criteria not been updated to reflect the practice, and will any retrospective approvals or remedial actions be pursued to ensure compliance?
I think we've been doing an awful lot of work with the PFAS working group, and certainly our colleagues that work on the waste acceptance criteria will be reviewing that. Again, we've been doing testing down at the Collette for the soils around those cells. We've been doing testing on the leachate from those cells moving forward, and also looking at the biosolids that are going to land. So again, as much as the liquid waste team have been doing that review, there's been a steady review and again monthly testing within that team. And again, in conjunction and having conversations with the PFAS team that works within regulation, and our waste regulators will be looking at what we need to do and review that in the future if it's needed.
And sorry, just to make sure we understand, when you're saying you're testing, what are you finding?
At the moment, the levels have been very low. So, and within range and within that limits, and that's what we need to continue to look at as well in the future and check that nothing does happen or nothing's different.
So when you say review,
Yeah.
at the moment, because it's low, which way would the review go towards increase, saying that actually a zero tolerance?
Reducing the testing to more quarterly. At the moment, we'll be doing it monthly, but looking at that, probably to looking at quarterly testing.
Okay. So you're testing the leachate from the cells at Le Collette. But if you detect presence of PFAS in it, would that leachate still be taken to Belazan for processing, and then would that then still be discharged into St Albans Bay?
I think that could depend on the reviews. At the moment, the levels have been so low that there's not been a concern. Obviously, there's lots of conversations now that if the levels were high, and hopefully that won't be the case with our waste acceptance criteria moving forward, then we'd have to manage and see, what's the best option to be able to deal with that, with that material.
So at the moment, that will be new waste coming in.
Yeah.
Is then tested, and if that is then higher than what is allowed to be in, where does the waste go?
Depends what type of, so if it's waste that's coming in over our weighbridge and we're doing testing, generally that would go into an area and that'll be down for the individuals or the organisations that have brought that to be able to deal with that material on that side, because we don't accept that at Le Collette through that testing side.
Okay, and do they have avenues to get rid of it? Do they have to clean it? How does it work?
I think that's obviously there's lots of conversations and the report's being released at the moment. So again, there'll be recommendations about what those organisations and businesses should be doing with that waste on that side.
Excavating contaminated soils, even once, is hazardous and costly. When highlighted, the St Helier waterfront excavation unearthed large quantities of contaminated landfill. Minister, what are you doing to apply a dig once principle for known or suspected PFAS contaminated areas?
I think part of our waste strategy is around what we charge people for contaminated waste. So we expect to see less contaminated waste presented to us because of the economics of it, basically. So people perhaps who are considered going down a certain depth will review their plans and not go down as deep, and therefore we shouldn't receive as much as was anticipated. And I think that was part of the planning permission that we received in terms of Loch Collet.
Is there a worry that there will be people will dispose of that in other ways rather than going through the official channels?
Well, that's then, I believe that's down to the enforcement, which comes under the Environment Minister rather than myself. I think I'm right in saying that.
So, Minister, are you aware that the SOJDC's website, under their waterfront development pages, states that the Government of Jersey's planning application to extend the capacity at Loch Collet has been approved, thereby providing necessary capacity for excavated waste arising from the waterfront? In addition, JDC will rationalise the proposed basements in order to minimise the waste arising.
Yes, I think it'll come down to basic economics, whether they can afford to dig down and pay the fees for us to handle the waste, or whether it's cost efficient not to do that.
We'll be talking about waste shortly, Minister, don't worry.
Are there constraints around PFAS contaminated waste disposal now affecting other major projects beyond the waterfront? If developments such as the new Overdale Hospital or planned harbour improvements or Gas Place uncover PFAS contaminated soil, what is the plan for dealing with it?
Well, I think, whilst I've only scanned the report that came out earlier this morning, I think it is important to remind ourselves that many samples were below detectable levels. The findings I found were encouraging, if that can be said, in relation to PFAS. That doesn't mean to say that we can relax and not worry about PFAS, but I think it's less of a problem than perhaps I and others may have been anticipating.
Because obviously we have the Plume area, which is the very widely known area, which takes us onto the St Peter's sewage attenuation tank. Can you confirm whether any planning conditions have been formally discharged, if all planning conditions have been formally discharged for the sewage tank?
Well, I need to check with officers, but I can't imagine we'd have started work without discharging those conditions.
I believe they have.
Discharged.
So what assessment was undertaken to ensure that the conditions still meet the requirements set out within the island plan and the 2017 supplementary planning guidance on contaminated land?
Again, I'm not an engineer, so I'm going to have to hand over to people that know what they're talking about.
All the technical documentation, so everything that was requested for us as from the regulators on that side was discharged, and we provided all the documentation to make sure that our contractors and our workers are complying and making sure that we're dealing with the soils in the right way.
And just to be clear as well, that so there was tests before that what level of PFAS was found in the soil there? Was it lower than
It was a lower level than what was than the standard that was set.
the standard? And will that continually be tested as it's being extracted, the soil being extracted? So
yeah, there will be continual checks as part of that process as well.
Do you know how regular intervals they test it? Because obviously this tank is
It
like
is
7
documented.
stories
I can get
down.
back to you and let you know the exact monitoring process on that side.
Okay, that's good.
There's again, if you want to go as a panel to see that project, I'd be quite interested in going myself. Happy to facilitate that.
Yeah, I think that'd be very good.
Yeah.
The only other question around this area is on the boreholes and wells that are in private ownership there. Are you confident in the department's understanding of how PFAS and other contaminants could migrate during the excavation and future operation of the tanks, and what assessments have been undertaken to evaluate those risks?
Well, again, I'm going to have to pass to officers, but before I do that, I have every confidence in the team. You know, the tanks are going to be sealed, so therefore there shouldn't be any leakage from there. But I have to pass to officers for advice.
Again, in accordance with the regulators and agreement with the regulators, there's a monitoring procedure that's been set up to make sure that nothing does change, or if something does change, then we can be able to deal with that in that timely fashion. And again, if the panel require more information, I will share that. I'm happy to share that after the meeting.
So that boreholes and wells around that area will be.
I think that's being done
tested.
by the regulators on some of that side as part of what their requirements are and what they're looking at as part of the work that they're doing on PFAS in that sense.
Move on to waste.
So moving to waste, and still talk about both liquid and solid waste today. But first, looking back to our budget review public hearing, you noted that the terms of reference for the liquid waste charging should be finalised shortly, and that we then need to go out to consultation about the scope of the charging and the method of charging and what the public expect from their liquid waste. What progress has been made since then on the terms of reference and their finalisation?
John, can you tell me
I
that?
think we're just about there on terms of reference. In fact, it's probably my delay. I apologise on this. I need to take them back to the minister, but I think we're just about there on terms of reference. So we had done a briefing paper for the minister on some potential options as well. So there is work going on in the background, but we just need to sort of button down 1 or 2 things on the TOR.
So when do you think the minister will be, or minister, when do you think you'll be briefed? Whoever's best to
I would expect
place
it's going to
answer
be
that
early January.
one. Early January.
We are keen to progress this work. We have to progress this work because currently we know there's going to be a shortfall, and therefore we need to move on.
Yep. Given the kind of the high public interest in this area, will the terms of reference, will how you plan to work through this policy area be published?
Well, I think they have to be published. For me, it's about engaging with stakeholders, and that includes the public. I think what we've tried to do is to demonstrate to people what the need is. We've started some major projects, but that's what it is. It's a start. So for us to ensure we've got a network which is capable of dealing with the liquid waste on the island, and we're also mindful of issues and challenges around flooding on the island. This is not something we can put on the back burner and forget about. We've got to progress, and I gave a commitment that whilst I was sitting in this chair that I would try and progress it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. It's not popular. I can tell you most of the things we do aren't popular, but we are trying to do them.
I presume the plan being finalised to come to you as to how to progress this will involve consultation and an approach to consultation.
I'd expect it to include consultation and communication.
Yeah. Perhaps to your officers, what thought has gone into how consultation will gather evidence around equity, and in particular around the fact that liquid waste already has some challenges with regards to those who are on private connections who already pay a charge with regards to liquid waste?
Well, before the
what thoughts gone into
officer answers, I'm really keen on equity because Deputy Johnson will remember I was on the other side of the table last time, and it wasn't equitable and it wasn't fair. And we the proposals at that time were for small businesses to be paying a waste charge and large properties not to pay a waste charge, and that wasn't fair or equitable. And I'm very mindful of the fact that we've got some people, hundreds of homes, who have to pay for their waste to be taken away. So we have to find mechanisms, and I was really interested to watch a report on the local TV about Guernsey's challenges in the same area recently, but I'll pass you to John, please.
There are a number of different ways that charges could be brought in, and I think depending on what we end up choosing will determine the relative merits of equitable solutions, to be honest with you. And we've got to have a balance between what we can practically do, look at the administration of it as well, but primarily focus on what the impact analysis is on the customers. And I think in order to bring something like this in, you've got to demonstrate that the charges are fair and equitable, and that's one of the sort of prime drivers of the methodology behind what we'll try and do with it, really.
And given you mentioned there's a number of ways one can enact a waste charge, different levers, different mechanisms, what, Minister, will you be receiving in your briefing in January? How far developed are those options? Is it going to contain the different policy actions yet, or is it open? And again, I ask to you, but perhaps the person who's going to brief you will know how far along the work actually is.
If I knew what I was going to receive in my briefing, I would suggest I'd been briefed. But
it's what John to say. You know, there are mechanisms people talk about, whether it be the rates, whether it be the water, whether it be self-submission, whatever it might be. Is what's being developed within the department to go forward at a stage where those options are down on the table, or are you not at a stage where kind of a firm kind of set of options?
I'm sure by the time they come to me, all those options will be included, because there are people who are absolutely opposed to the rate system being used for waste charges, and there are people who think it's the best way to do it. So, as always with infrastructure projects, we won't be able to please everybody. There's a lot of people would like to see it done as in most areas where it's done on water usage, but that doesn't take into account recycling of grey water, etc. So there's a whole range of options which I hope we're going to be presented to myself in the briefing, because if it's going to be true consultation, we will be putting all the options on the table.
So you hope to get the options, and then you hope to present all the options publicly and get some really good feedback on that?
I don't think at this stage, if we're serious about going out to consultation, we should be ruling anything in or anything out. I may or may not have a personal preference, but we should be asking, if we're going for consultation, let's do that and let's consult.
Brilliant. Solid waste.
Can I ask before then, maybe just the time frame of how far you think you will be able to get before we have the inevitable break?
Well, we're certainly not going to conclude, but we certainly will have launched a consultation. I fully expect that. And, if I'm briefed in early January, I'd like to think that we'll be starting towards the end of January, if not early February. This is something that I've said, we're not going to hide behind. I don't think we've hidden behind anything. Whilst I've been Minister, we've tried to tackle things head on. However unpopular they may be at times, this is a necessity for the island. We've got Victorian drains running underneath the street of St Helier, which have done a fantastic job for over 100 years, but they're unlikely to do another 100, so we need to start addressing that.
Brilliant. On to solid waste, and the panel understands that a solid waste strategy is due to be published in 2026, not least because we had an officer-led briefing yesterday. But can you outline your vision for the strategy and what it will include?
Well, I think you were lucky to have the briefing yesterday, because I'd have quite enjoyed joining you at the briefing. A number of us attended a briefing recently about waste, and I'm really keen on this personally, and fully support initiatives like Rag Trade, which generally sees, in the case of Rag Trade, predominantly clothing reused rather than sent as waste. And we've got some great examples with Durrell and Hospice and Acorn, where they do lots of what I call proper recycling, where things get reused. And I'm very happy to go to those places and buy shirts and the like, and also donate to those organisations. St Martin's have just joined us with recycling. I would love to see all of the parishes have a uniformed recycling approach. I think the next committee, the kind of time, have got a real opportunity in front of them to actually work with government to get that in place. I'm fully aware that 2 parishes still don't offer curbside recycling, which I think is a travesty. It'll be 20 years next year that St John's have done that as the first parish. I was really interested to learn about what's happening in Newport with the organisation there, a charity which educates and helps and encourages people, and they've seen fantastic results. And I'd like to go and visit Newport early in the new year to see what they do and how they do it. And I know somebody's just been there and they were very complimentary about the operation.
Of course, solid waste covers everything from the recycling of various materials to some of the bigger volume challenges of inert and contaminated waste. And the previous, or the extant solid waste strategy from 2005 highlighted many of the challenges. However, in the intervening period, the department's handling of waste didn't necessarily meet or respond to the challenges, such as ensuring adequate capacity for contaminated waste, and this led to the unlawful creation of mounds that had to be regularised. How are you going to ensure that the solid waste strategy sets out a plan that means the department can both fulfil its obligations and set forward a path that means it acts in accordance with the strategy in the future, unlike what happened with the 2005 strategy?
Yeah, I think I do have some sympathy towards the department and the challenges it faces. We are often faced with the need to come up with practical solutions, and I don't think that the department would have done what they did unless they absolutely had to. And I think there's a real need for us to. 2005 is 20 years ago. We've really got to, as we are doing, have another look at what we do and how we do it. But work with industry, work with the public. I always get kicked under the table sometimes because I don't mention often enough about reducing waste in the first place, reusing before you recycle. And there's some terrific examples. If you haven't visited the recycling operation at La Collette to see the aggregates that are created there, and now the concrete plant there, it's absolutely first class. I don't know if your panel has or hasn't been there, but if you haven't, it's somewhere else that I would really highly recommend you go and see.
Also, as part of that planning application, as you're aware, we had conditions. Part of that was to develop a hazardous waste management plan. That condition was discharged. We sent that through to planning in October this year. So again, we still haven't had a response from our planning colleagues, but again, that would be really helpful. And again, we're looking at trying to commission a piece of study to look at what we are and the island's going to require for future hazardous waste.
Okay, I'll note that I chaired the meeting that both approved that application and added that condition to the application. But I guess your sympathy, Minister, on this comes from the fact that it sounds like the department had to keep receiving, at some times, and we've seen historical figures, vast volumes from certain developments. Will the new strategy perhaps change the mandate of the department to do things such as, in line with the conditions imposed, reject waste when it's egregious, when it's kind of utterly unnecessary?
Well, I think there's more understanding. I think there are more options than perhaps there were back then, and we don't accept conditions with the intention not to meet those conditions. So we will accept the conditions in good faith, and that's why, for example, the charges for contaminated waste will be significantly different to what they were then. And if you were a developer and you were able to dispose of your contaminated waste almost for nothing, then you would just generate that waste and pass it on to somebody. And again, this is a decision we've made, which I believe is a sensible decision to increase the costs. But if you were a developer, you'd probably think that it's not reasonable for me to increase the costs. That's the challenges we have, I'm afraid.
And so it sounds like you'd also like a bit more briefing on the solid waste strategy, like we had. But can you update us on the timeline for publication and any publication method and consultation?
Listen, I do work reasonably closely with the officers in waste. I don't want you to think that I don't know what's happening within waste. Only 3 weeks ago, we met somebody who had an opportunity, if I can describe it as that, for disposal of a certain type of waste, which was a really interesting programme, possibly not appropriate for Jersey, but we've invited that person to bring colleagues to the island to see what we do going forward. In terms of publication, then I would imagine that will be in Q1 next year.
Thank you.
That's right.
Yes, okay. Move on to the perhaps a happier subject of roadworks. I'm not sure it is.
Yes.
A few questions actually. Mr. The northern sewer network upgrade on the Grand Route de Saint-Jean is a 2-year project running from November 2025 to February 2027. Can you please provide an update as to progress?
Well, I just want to correct you, it's not quite 2 years. It may seem like 2 years or 10 years for some people. In fact, last night somebody asked me if I knew where they lived, and I said yes, the M1, because they live right in the middle of the diversion, and the amount of traffic passing them is increased significantly. Progress is good, I understand. And again, I'm told that by officers, but I'm also told that by householders who speak to the people on the job. So I'm told progress is good. It's fair to say that we've started on what would be described as the easiest parts of the job. So if you imagine from the Union Inn to the crossroads at Rue de Becquet Vincent, there's very limited in the way of services entering the road. When we get to the crossroads with Servile Cemetery, that's when we start to get very complex. It almost looks like Spaghetti Junction when you see the amount of services that are coming into the road, and the sewage pipe is often underneath those services. I thank particularly the residents of the affected areas. I know it's difficult for everybody. Compounded in the last couple of weeks on Morphallard with an emergency excavation for gas, which meant traffic lights were put there, which you certainly wouldn't plan to close. Morphallard at the same time as you got the Grand Route de Saint-Jean closed.
I have encountered those, thank you.
Yeah, so have I. But those lights were taken away last night, I'm pleased to say. But the works are progressing well. We've got 2 local contractors doing the job to try and condense the time it takes. But it's essential. It's compounded. I went with the Roads Committee of St John and Trinity, some of the honorary police, to look at the site a couple of weeks ago so that we could fully understand the complexities of the job. They've got to excavate in some parts up to 4 metres deep, which means that there's a lot of shoring up to be done to make it safe for people to work in that space. I was very impressed with the professionalism of the people doing the works. There's over pumping, so sewage is literally taken from the sewer in pipes, pumped along the road, and then back into the sewer afterwards. It's a complex job, it's a difficult job, but it's essential.
But again, on progress, it is according to plan.
I understand we may be a day or 2 ahead, but that's about it. So we're on plan, and we finish. I think it's the 23rd of December, and we aren't removing the diversions because it would take another week to set it all up again. So we ask for people's patience through that time.
And Minister, you talked about the emergency need for the works in Morphallard, but there's been quite a few other noted road closures that kind of have been those feed roads because of the main roads in both St Peter's and on the St John's Road have not, have closed. With the coordination, I mean, are all these roadworks in the same kind of category as the Montfellard, where it's emergency, or is there a way to be able to coordinate a bit more to say maybe those works can't be done now? It just feels that some.
Okay, so the only works that I've been asked to approve is works on Morphallow in St Peter's, which are for 3 days, which is to ensure that people retain a telephone signal. So I dare say the people that live and work in that area will be appreciative of retaining a telephone signal, and the people that commute that way will be disappointed. We've agreed to those works being done in the school holidays when we see around a 20% reduction in traffic. If you've been anywhere near the west of the island, you'll have seen prior notification has been put up as much as possible. There's a huge amount of work that goes on in terms of coordinating works. We've got the 5G masts going up. We've got the JEC, or Jersey Electric, doing significant upgrades to their network. I think they call it the Big Dig. We have seen Jersey Water at times have to open up roads when there's a leak, and we've got the Island Energy who have to open up a road if there's a problem with gas, and that's unavoidable. If you go online on our government website, you can see the next 5 years of road resurfacing programs, and all of that is coordinated with the utilities. So the utilities companies will go in before we resurface a road to ensure that they don't have to, they don't break an embargo and have to pay for full reinstatement. So monthly meetings take place with the utilities and the parishes and ourselves. Everything goes on to the system called Traffic Works. Recently, we delayed some work in St John because we know we already had an application from infrastructure for drains, and the JEC wants to go on the same road. It transpired it was going to be different contractors. They weren't going to use the same trench, and so we reluctantly approved 2 closures instead of 1 closure.
And we've heard from you, Minister, about these coordination meetings, and I think where the discussion is there then within those coordination meetings a way to see how the traffic flows? So being the most important is like, can people get from A to B with that traffic flow? So understanding that those road closures, it's not just about announcing that there's going to be road closures or but actually seeing
Yeah, it's a good question, and at times you would think that there was no coordination at all. But I can assure you and members of the public that there's a huge effort that goes into the planning for any major roadworks. And the team that have done the Northern Sewer Extension and the St Peter's Works, they're local people with local knowledge and local experience. We have in the past used UK people who are very experienced in Jersey for some of our resurfacing works. But before any of those major projects are undertaken, there's dialogue with the local roads committees, and the Northern Works. I think we were talking to Trinity, St John, and St Helier back in April. That's when the first correspondence was received by those parishes. So there's a huge amount of work that goes underway, and I have to give credit to the team who listened to the feedback from people who know the local areas better than they do, perhaps, and they adopted suggested changes which came from roads committees and residents and businesses. So it wasn't cast in stone. We had a good plan, and that plan, I think, has been enhanced. It's disruption is always difficult for people. I was late at a doctor's appointment the other day because of the lights on Morphallow, but I got there and I got seen. And if I'd have known the lights were there, I'd have left earlier, I dare say.
Thank you. Yes, and I can confirm that certainly our parish has regular consultation with you if there's going to be major development in Samaria again. Yes, going back to St John's Main Road, businesses reported that they fear they won't survive a year of rolling road closures. How do you respond to those concerns of such businesses, and particularly where disruption is prolonged?
Well, I understand that, and I have spoken to a number of those businesses personally. I am having some dialogue with colleagues about what, if any, help could be given. I think some of the challenges are if a road is dug up for a week, that's disrupting to businesses and individuals. But a week is very different to 15, 17 months. And I think the longer road works, we are looking to see if there is anything we can do. It's too early to see whether we can or can't. Always, if it involves funding, that money's got to be found. And we've just heard how challenging it is to provide the sewer network that we need to without actually funding businesses that are closed. But I have spoken informally with both the Chief Minister and the Economy Minister, and we're due to have further discussions when people return from holidays. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. You've anticipated my next two questions. One which was going to refer to the written answer from the Minister for Sustainable Economic Development, confirm that there will be such conversations and potential options. Okay, so when are you due to discuss, and when might we hear some result?
We had hoped that we could have had those discussions before today, but I've been a little distracted at times in recent days and weeks. But one of the suggestions that I've made is whether or not we can do something similar to COVID with some kind of payroll support. Now, in theory, that could work, but who do you include? What are the rules that you put in place? What is the length of time when it's activated or not activated? And where does the money come from? So there's lots of ifs, buts and maybes, but we are very aware of the challenges. All of the businesses retain access throughout the works. I think that's important to say. And, we're encouraging people to continue to use those businesses. Some of the businesses that are concerned have actually seen a terrific increase in the amount of passing trade. And I'm always surprised not to see a notice board outside those businesses advertising their business. So I think a lot of businesses have done what they can. If you get to Hope Qua, I think I'm right in saying there's a sign there to say businesses open as usual. There's not one sign to say what those businesses are. And, in other areas, businesses have gone out and put up signs and done what they can. So, yeah.
We're taking all that on board. Going back to my earlier point, you're having discussions with your colleagues, and can we expect some sort of statement or even sort of consultation paper or whatever?
I certainly would have expected those discussions to take place before we sit again in the Assembly on the 20th of January. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's very easy to come up with a payroll support scheme, but the complexity is in where do you find the money and what are the parameters?
Right, we noticed the problems about finding the money. Thank you.
Yeah.
Looking into sort of individual roads for me, the panel notes that roadworks since the summer have produced different public reactions depending on where they are. For example, the Trinity and recent St Peter's closures drew vocal criticism from traders and motorists, whereas that for the Esplanade road contraflow did not. How do you explain the difference between these public reactions?
Well, it's probably time, isn't it? Because the Esplanade works has been going on for a number of years, dare I say, in terms of doing it in a staged approach. And the traffic can see where they would normally drive, and they're just in a contraflow system, so people accept that. When you have to divert down lanes that you might not normally use, it probably feels different. I have to say, I regularly take one of my family members to the airport and pick them up from the airport almost on a weekly basis. It probably takes me 2 minutes longer. That's about it. If people follow the signs, and follow the speed limits, the traffic really does flow. It's when people ignore traffic signs and or ignore speed limits, that's when we have problems.
Right, you're throwing it into my next question, I think, which is the main problem is possibly in road in distraction relates to the public not observing signage. What assessment has your department undertaken to determine whether the signage system is itself contributing to non-compliance, and what changes would you like to see if that proves to be the case?
Well, quite frankly, I would like to see technology used and cameras used, because where you've got a sign telling people that you could face up to £1,000 fine if you ignore the sign, and people just drive around that, I think that's wholly inappropriate. And I have been sent a number of photographs of vehicles totally ignoring that, including commercial vehicles. So I think the signage has been tweaked, certainly on the St John's project, I think also on the St Peter's project. But it takes some explaining to me when you've got a sign that says no left turn, then you've got a no entry sign, which underneath it's got a sign that says £1,000 if you come up this road, and you watch people ignore the left turn and ignore the no entry sign. It's bemusing me.
Minister, so a number of those vehicles, I've had personal conversations with people because they are coming at me in the wrong direction as I'm trying to get home, whether it's walking or in their car. And often it's very panicked people because they know they're not right, because they basically are saying that, and you was talking about technology, they're saying that Google Maps is not telling them how to get to where they need to go. And I'm just wondering whether
Other map providers are available.
yes, and it's how do we get? But I think it's more about it's understanding people's behaviour and trying to work out how to, because at the moment the situation is people panic because they know, or potentially some people are panicking because they know they're going down the wrong way, so they go faster to get out of the situation, which will cause even more of concerns. And luckily, so far, not accidents. But it's actually, in a way, more dangerous because they know that they're doing it wrong and they're continuing because they need to get to the other end and they don't know,
Well, we
how do
held
we-
7 drop-in sessions, 2 at St Helier, 2 at Trinity, 2 at St John's Parish Hall. We held a further drop-in session at the URC at Zion for local residents. We have publicised and publicised. Now, for some of these people, you have to question whether they should be driving, because if they knowingly have gone down a one-way street the wrong way, one would question whether they should be allowed to drive a vehicle. And I've seen it myself where people don't think the sign stands for them. Yeah. Conversely, I've had people write to me this week saying, "We love the one-way system, can you make it permanent?" So it is difficult. I understand that a number of people have been warned to attend parish hall inquiries when they've been found to be going the wrong way, down a one-way. And at the start of the roadworks on the northern sewer, there may have been an excuse because signage wasn't as good as it should have been. But there's no excuse. Somebody drives around that site at least 3 times a day, and we continually try to make improvements. So there's no excuse. And if people are ignoring no entry signs, road close signs, they are not optional. They are there, and it's not infrastructure who polices things. It's either the State of Jersey Police or the Honorary Police. We're not the enforcement. And we have to think about the safety of residents and also the workers, because it's not practical to have one lane of traffic running whilst those roadworks are happening. We've looked at the possibility that it's just not feasible, it's not safe.
Yeah. Going back to signage in relation to businesses, understanding is that you will provide additional signage if businesses ask, and that we've received reports from some saying they had to do make their own signage. And what is the policy there? Do you go out to
Every I believe every junction, I may be wrong, but I believe every junction's got a sign to say businesses are open as usual. If you want to put your brand up, we've helped people to do that, but we can't be putting up different brands for different people and ignoring people who, we can't be selective. So by putting that generic sign up to say businesses open as usual,
and it's up to the business, and you reckon to
If a
approach
business-
you if you want more.
If a business approached me about a sign in St John's, I'd speak to the landowner and say, can we put a sign there for 3 months, 6 months to help this business? And I would be fairly confident that the landowners, where appropriate, would help us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then my last point in this area really is the CNAG recently issued a report on critical infrastructure resilience for transport links. Do you anticipate any changes in the roads law as a result of that?
Well, I read the transport links as being more to do with boats and aeroplanes. We are doing a huge amount of work on the roads law, and the team there are making, I would say, good progress. But yeah, I think I'm not sure if we'll see change there.
Okay, I'll leave that for now. Still on legislation, the road traffic law, drugs limits, Jersey Amendment regulations. What specific drug driving limits, substances and threshold levels are being proposed under these regulations?
Well, I have to say I'm frustrated with the length of time it's taken, but I believe we're making good progress. And I think there are going to be 2 limits, which is not uncommon. So there is a limit of 5, I think it's UGL, which doesn't mean anything to me.
Micrograms per litre.
Thank you. Micrograms per litre for regular drivers, but a limit of only 2 for professional drivers. So if you're driving a vehicle, a heavy goods vehicle or a passenger carrying vehicle, you'd have a lower limit. At the moment, we have a sobriety test, and it's very difficult for the police to actually have successful prosecutions. We see in other jurisdictions, and we've no reason to see why Jersey would be different, that drug driving is as big, if not a bigger problem than drink driving. And I met only last week one lunchtime with a concerned resident and the head of road traffic policing, who has reported on a number of occasions people who are openly smoking weed, whatever it's called, and driving, and it's a real concern. It's a real concern. So we hope to be able to brief. The drafting is complete. I just need to check with my colleagues in Health and Justice and Home Affairs. We then need to notify the council ministers and provide documents and briefing to your panel, the Justice Home Affairs panel and the Health panel. I think we'll try and do that together before lodging that, because we really want to be able to progress this really important work, and we've looked at it to do it as simple as possible to start with, because something is better than nothing, and then that can be added to in the future. I think if we tried to do everything at once, it would never happen. So, I know the road safety, the head of road safety and infrastructures worked tirelessly with colleagues to get it as far as we are, and I don't go a meeting without asking the question. So we're getting close, and I hope we can count on your support once you've seen the detail to get this ready.
Thank you for that.
You said about the 2 and 5 milligrams per litre of blood. Was that for specific substances? Is that THC, or is that going to be?
That is cannabis. I think
Obviously, we have
there
other
is.
drugs in.
So I think the only other drug included at the moment would be cocaine. So that would, I don't think that gets away from the fact that you shouldn't drive whilst using drugs, but this is for roadside testing. So we'll have the ability to do roadside testing, and if someone proves positive and they've got above that limit in their body, then they would be able to be prosecuted. I think for other drugs, it would still currently rely on the sobriety test. But I think when we give you the briefing, we'll be able to explain more detail of that, and you'll have someone that understands that or not. Yeah.
Going back to that briefing, and you jumped to my final question actually on this. Yeah, well, we obviously welcome such a briefing, but can you give any indication of timeline on that?
Well, it looks like we're going to be busy, isn't it, in January? But I certainly would like to think that's going to be in the first 2 weeks of January, because if it's not, I won't be very happy, because I know the officers have done everything they can to get it here, and I pay tribute to them because they've worked tirelessly. It's not easy. There's a real genuine concern from some doctors about the level of whatever it is in people's blood. What is it, John?
Well, the THC is delta 9 tetrahydrocannabidiol.
So there's real concern, genuine concern from general practitioners who are seeing patients who are professional drivers with high levels in their blood, and we have to do a lot of work around education, but we also have to give the enforcement agencies the tools to do the job.
I've got two more detailed questions, which may actually better left for the briefing, but the one question is that how will the regulations, if you're able to say, differentiate between impairment and legitimate prescription medicinal drug use, and what safeguards can be put in place to cover that?
Well, occasionally my lovely wife tells me to have a glass of wine or a pint of Guinness, but that doesn't allow me to drive my car afterwards. I don't think that there will be any difference between those prescribed and non-prescribed, is my understanding. There will be a difference between professional drivers will have a lower threshold than non-professional drivers.
Okay, and you say you've had feedback from medicinal practitioners. I mean, is that the main area of consultation that's been to date, or?
No, I think there has been some consultation with other areas, but it's GPs that have approached us with their concerns, genuine concerns. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of questions on the roadworks and events permitting scheme, because it's the last time we'll see you before that comes into play. Have you received any update as to the uptake through the provider for safety, as to how many people have, in essence, become qualified, given that's now going to be the statutory requirement?
So I haven't had
trading?
I haven't had an update in terms of number. So the provision is now done locally by a local company, which was where we started our conversations an hour ago, talking about on-island provision rather than people coming to the island to provide that service. It's very similar, I think I've mentioned this before, to somebody going onto a building site and needing to sign, as we do when we go and visit sites, to say they've had a health and safety briefing. We are trying to ensure that it's practical. But I don't have the numbers. I'll have to write to you with the numbers of people that have done it.
Okay. Yeah. Part of moving to the RWX card for Jersey is to not accept UK or similar qualifications, but to allow a transfer of that. What leeway from January onwards is going to be given to those who are found, or do you hope would be given to those who are found to have a valid piece of qualification, but not necessarily have transferred to the Jersey one for whatever reason?
I honestly, I'd like to think that there would be a common sense approach taken, but I've not discussed that with officers. But I'll have to come back to you. I think we're trying to, the team that do this work, I find incredibly helpful, and I think they want to help with educating people rather than enforcement in the first instance. We do see some horrific things on the road at times, horrific things which frighten me, but in general, those the main contractors who we've just been discussing under roadworks all know what they're doing, and I think signage around our roadworks has improved over the years. And I was in France in the summer and kept coming up against roadworks which were just like a barrier in the road, and I'm not sure which is the right approach. I dare say somewhere in the middle is probably the right approach, because at times there are so many signs. It just looks as though it's a wall of yellow, doesn't it, at the end of the road? But I think I'd like to think that our officers will help organisations and prosecute if there's a repeat rather than in the first instance. But I think that would be the approach.
Yeah, no, that is the approach from the team's taken.
A very practical team.
Useful to hear. We're going to move to sea defences and the shoreline management plan. On sea defences in particular, Minister, you might be aware that concerns have been raised by members of the public, in particular around the sea walls and responsibility of areas of the wall in Greve Dezet. Minister, are you aware that concerns have been raised about the ownership of that and the maintenance of areas? And if so, how has your department been working with landowners on establishing a way forward?
I am aware of one property in that area, and I think that's subject to some form of inquiry. So I'm not sure what we can and can't say. I don't know. I'm looking for advice as to.
I think there's a complaint ongoing, but certainly concerns have been raised, and I think that we're limited in what we can say.
Okay, so you're active. Yeah, you're limited to what you can say.
I think I'm limited, and what I wouldn't want to do is to say something in a public hearing which I'm told I shouldn't have said. So.
Okay, well, I had quite a few questions on that. So, if that's where we get to,
we can discuss it at the end of the hearing.
What I would say is we would appreciate an update. The scrutiny panel have also been party to seeing correspondence, and no doubt we'd like to understand the situation and also understand when the public can also understand the situation as well. However, we understand that those areas are covered by, would be covered in a long-term part of the shoreline management plan. So how, as the plans for the shoreline management plan are being developed, are responsibilities at a general level being understood between public and private stakeholders?
Really good question. I think there's been a lot of stakeholder engagement, and I think the proposals would alleviate the problem that's been highlighted, regardless of the ownership elements. I think people have asked for privacy to be retained where possible, so it would make sense to put any kind of planting against an existing property rather than putting that near the sea and having the pathway next to the house. So I think the design will be sympathetic, I'd like to think, to preserve properties' privacy.
Okay.
Does it not go further, because it goes into that issue of the seawall going all, the big chunks of the seawall that are going around the island? So it's not just the particular place where there's going to be that extension out and new land in a way being made. It's more about also understanding that those responsibilities.
Well, certainly when it comes to the sea wall, we've seen the successful work that's taken place at Beaumont near the gun site, where we've changed the design and stops the overlapping, and that's been very successful. Other parts of the sea defence and shoreline management plan sees us increasing the height of a new wall and extending that wall out into the sea by a number of metres. So I think it's different treatments for different parts of the island.
And then at a general level, what's the department's approach to ensuring that residents, businesses understand their responsibilities and then those of the government when it comes to any elements of shoreline defences?
Well, what I've tried to do since I've arrived is to try and resolve a number of issues with where there may or may not have been infractions in the past. And I think we've managed to do that in the main. We've just taken a consistent approach to that as far as I can tell. Where somebody currently has steps onto the beach, in the future they may have to cross a footpath and a cycle path and walk between a garden to get to the beach. So their access will change, won't it?
Thank you, Minister. And we're on to our last area of questions for today. Half day par and the Lido, of course. There's no surprise that we have some questions for you there. So in your statement in the States Assembly on the 12th of December, you stated that following Durat Olson's findings and the withdrawal of R158 2025, we will rerun the second part of the process. I feel that this must be undertaken externally to Jersey Property Holdings. I've therefore asked Jersey Business to run and oversee this process to a conclusion, and that negotiations will recommence with Love Our Lido to seek to agree at least by the end of January 2026. Could you explain the process in relation to this second stage of the expression of interest? Give us a bit more detail of what this means.
Love Our Lido will be invited to meet with Jersey Business with the aim of agreeing a lease. So, I think it's important to note that Durat Olson said that all parties had the draft lease from the 23rd of May. And it was a pretty simple lease, which was part of his report. So we've got one party who's believes they can operate for the £60,000 that the government have offered. So we would, if the Love Our Lido want to participate, we would expect them to do it for the same price.
And so those there was a number of elements where Love Our Lido was asking for further information, not just talking about the financial aspects, but there was a number of information to help them to get to that understanding. Will those documents be provided to them? Is that something
I'm not
that's
sure.
part of
I'm not sure if there was any outstanding information. I think there was concern over the time it had taken for some of the information, for them to get some of the information.
Have they now been provided that?
Well, I think they were provided that. My understanding is they were provided that at the start or mid-September. I'm not sure that there was anything outstanding. What has happened is colleagues from Property Holdings and the Law Officers Department have met with Jersey Business to give them the information they need, and we are waiting to hear back from Jersey Business.
And we're waiting to hear, so that the deadline is the end of January.
Yeah.
And what are the implications, you believe, for rerunning this second phase for both the shortlisted parties? Is there anything that could be of concern because of this?
Well, I would really hope that both the parties could talk to each other, because I do firmly believe that both parties could work together. It's an opportunity. I think we all want the same thing. It's important to note that people are able to swim at Havre de Par. The toilets are open, the changing rooms are open, and will continue to be so. So
I think, and both of those parties, of course, put that, to be able to create, that money that they needed to help maintain the site is by utilising the event space that is currently there and the different concessions that are there. How is it going to work with it? Will the facility still be there? Will the equipment be there for them to be able to set up and go, or will those?
Well, the current licence is quite clear, in as much as the current operator is able to take away their movable things, and anything that's fixed is part of the property. So I understand that Jersey Business are due to go and have a look at the site in the coming days, and just compare itinerary lists as to what is and what isn't part of the property.
And if those movables go, because of course that lease is coming to the end on the 25th of December, and they've already closed. Was any of the shortlisted parties their proposals utilising those movables, or would they have to bring in their own movables? And will that delay either parties from setting up their own?
Well, there's there are different views, I think, as to what is and what isn't included in the lease, and our view is very clear. It's important to note that people had booked events for next year and paid deposits for events next year at a venue that the tenant had been given notice more than 12 months ago from now.
So I don't think that's the question.
Well, I think it's important that if you're concerned about whether someone can operate on day one,
Yes,
I think it's important that we understand the picture. So deposits were taken for a venue that wasn't, the tenant had no surety of being at that venue. A liquor license, a renewal of a liquor license has been renewed when the person who renewed the liquor license knew full well that notice had been served for the 25th of December.
More at the moment, those questions though are about the new parties that will be, and both of them have both expressed that they will be utilising those spaces in different ways, but potentially with certain licences and certain equipment that they would need that potentially is currently there. And my question is whether those will be then removed, and then is part of the expression of interest, part of the discussions with the licence, where both these parties would have to start again, or would they then be taking over a certain amount of?
I think the two parties have probably got different expectations. There is there are facilities which stay with the building as part of the licence, and there are movable assets which don't stay with the building. So
and will this be known to the parties before they sign the lease? Because would that not be something as part of a business plan you take?
I believe
forward?
so, and if there are any variances or questions, I'd expect our colleagues in Jersey Business to come back to us and talk to us about that.
And would that be given in time enough for the lease to be signed at the end of the month? So enough time for
I think
either
so.
party
We're
to
due
make
to
those
get
decisions?
vacant possession on or before the 25th of December.
Could I just ask, just to go back to what the chair was saying about the line that actually negotiations will recommence with one of the parties, the former preferred bidder, and I think obviously it was reassuring to read that Gerard Olsen found your officers to be honest, hardworking, and that actually that although he focuses on fairness, how are you going to ensure that Jersey Business retain fairness for both parties, knowing that ultimately First Point, who became the preferred bidder, albeit apart from what might be considered a technical element of communication, were able to comply with the lease requirements, whereas La Valido couldn't. Are you confident that, or are you happy that Jersey Business will not change the parameters at all to ensure fairness to both parties and nothing changes?
I don't see any need to change the parameters, and I made that point, I believe, in the States last week. The Gerard Olsen's report, which was very thorough, was against a set terms of reference.
Yeah.
And one could argue if the terms of reference had been broadened, he may have come up with additional findings. The Gerard Olsen's report, I think, is to be commended in terms of its quality and thoroughness, based on the terms of reference he was asked to look at.
But the work by Jersey Business, arguably with La Valido, will not be a period for negotiation as to what a lease will look like, what the terms are. The terms are exactly as set as was presented to both parties, and it is about if they can meet that, they can choose to, and obviously work on that. But there isn't a chance to negotiate outside of the formally EOI process that both parties would have had a fair chance to.
The EOI process has not changed. And I think it was the chair who asked the question in the Assembly about £66,000, which was wrongly reported by some media. It has always been £60,000. And again, Duet Olsen commended the quality of the description of what was on offer. And therefore, I think it must therefore be pretty clear to those people who have bid for the work under those terms, put expressions of interest in, and therefore I expect that Jersey Business have been told in their meeting that those are the terms that are on offer.
Thank you.
So, moving on to something that the panel has asked before in this area is that the location is in a designated Ramsar site. Could you confirm what explicit considerations was given to Ramsar obligations during this procurement process, and also if it's mentioned in the lease at all?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know if you can, Tim.
I think the lease requires the occupant of the site to meet all statutory and regulatory requirements. So it's quite broad, purposefully in that respect, to put the onus on the people who operate the site to meet the requirements.
And they are aware that it sits within a Ramsar site?
They've had the heads of terms for 8 or 9 months, and that due diligence would be for the people who are bidding. It wasn't specifically mentioned by the independent panel as being an issue for concern, so I wasn't part of that process, so I don't have immediate awareness, but the fact that it wasn't mentioned by the independent panel would indicate that if it was covered, then those parties that were applying for the lease were aware of it.
But would you, if it's not mentioned, maybe that's because it was not thought of, and so that would be, I think our question is environmental protections, mitigation requirements. Was that ever in an evaluation of the criteria, even for the independent panel? And in a way, was it given due consideration? Because it's all statutory obligations, of course. Many businesses and organisations wouldn't necessarily be operating in a Ramsar site. That, of course, is another level that maybe they're not aware of.
My understanding is that at least one of the parties is aware of the challenges when it comes to cleaning on that site because of the special nature of it.
But it wasn't specifically mentioned in the criteria.
I wasn't party to the independent panel, and again, I think Geraldson mentioned his appreciation of the particulars at the beginning of the process. I can't answer that specific question, but we'll go away and have a look.
Thank you. That would be really useful, and especially if it's then also mentioned in the lease as well, because again, as I say, it's a step difference to normal operating business operator. And also, of course, as the main landlord at the end of it, how to ensure that whoever is the operator will carry out activities that won't damage the marine environment. Of course, we don't want to have. We want mitigating, not having it after the fact. So I was wondering if the landlords put it in the lease. And I suppose we're talking about also the fact that any operator will be maintaining the site, and the question is, will the government retain the ability to terminate or vary the contract should maintenance prove insufficient or detrimental to the condition of the Lido or the surrounding area?
That's in all of our leases. If somebody doesn't comply with a lease, then you've broken your contract. So,
and this is relating to the maintenance of the Lido. Is there then going to be monitoring regularly with Jersey Property Holdings to ensure
I
maintenance?
think that's an area that we Property Holdings can improve upon. I'm well aware of local companies that take photographs when people go into buildings during the tenancy and when they leave buildings. And I think that's best practice, and I think that's an area that we can improve upon. I think that's fair to say.
Yes, and for landlords who who have to do it. It's law for condition reports, so that would be useful. And do you believe that all recent tender processes within your remit, Minister, have followed this best practice, or are there any areas that you think could benefit from the review that we've just heard in the process that we've just heard? Is there any way we could
Well, I
see
think
changes?
undoubtedly, and again, this was mentioned in the Assembly last week, undoubtedly, Le Creux worries me in terms of the time it has taken to what appears to get nowhere. So I did indicate that I was going to review Le Creux. I haven't this week, but I will either between Christmas and New Year or the first week of January.
Yeah. And is there any, from that, would you then take these two experiences with your review coming and this to put together some lessons learnt in the tendering process? Do you see that there are changes?
Undoubtedly, there's been lessons learned, and none of us are perfect. It's not something we do or have done often in the past, and undoubtedly there are lessons learned. And I think I said with hindsight, it would have been much better to have kept independent oversight throughout the process, and perhaps that's something we should consider going forward. And I'll be very happy to do a lessons learnt review after that process. Indeed, this evening I'm doing a lessons learnt review from the Christmas tractor run. There we are.
Thank you, Minister. I wonder if anyone has any further questions. We can gift you for Christmas 15 minutes of your time back, Minister.
That's gratefully received, and I shall return the compliment. There we are.
So thank you very much. Thank you for attending all our quarterly hearings this year, Minister. And I don't believe that we have that many left before the end of our term, but we do have at least one